Very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the right honourable member for Newcastle upon Tyne East. And as someone else who's been born and brought up in the North East, I understand the deep-seated challenges the region faces. And I hope that the emphasis in this budget about rebuilding the manufacturing sector, investing in high levels of skills, will make some progress towards tackling those problems. But the challenge was absolutely right to highlight the progress that's been made so far since we came into office in 2010, but also the further progress that we need to make. Our job is not done, and that's why I think the reforms the Chancellor announced today that referred to the need to strengthen the roles of the makers, the doers and the savers are absolutely vital if we're to secure the future of our economy, what is a very competitive world. And I want to just highlight, I think, some of the progress that actually we have made. And not much has been said about the unemployment figures that have been published today, Mr Deputy Speaker. We have seen a fall in the unemployment numbers, both the claimant count and labour force survey. We've also seen a big increase in the number of people in work, record numbers of women in work. Often the criticism from the party opposite is that these jobs are temporary or that they are part-time. The reality is that of the increase in employment over the course of the last year, nearly 460,000, 430,000 of those jobs are actually full-time jobs. We've seen over the last year a contraction in the number of temporary jobs in the economy, and therefore an increase, significant increase, in the number of permanent jobs in the economy.
Very good way.
Of course, yes.
I think it's really appropriate to recognise the important work that the Honourable Member made as a Minister in helping to move this agenda forward, which was a real contribution. And in the point that he raised, I think it's an important one, does he also recognise that there is an increase in the number of permanent or full-time self-employed people who are making a conscious decision they want to have a real say in the future of their own employment?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. And I think one of the interesting things has been the number of people who want to take control over their own lives and employment, who want to have security that comes from self-employment. A number of schemes that we've introduced to help young people find self-employment as a route out of poverty and unemployment is actually significant. And that has been a huge benefit, I think, to people who want to set up their own businesses. The dynamism that we've seen in the private sector, Mr Deputy Speaker, that's led to this increase in employment has actually been coupled by a key part of our long-term economic plan, and that's the importance of welfare reform. Welfare reform has sharpened the incentive to work. We also expect more of those people who are out of work. For example, we brought forward the point when we work with lone parents before their youngest child starts school, in order that they're better prepared to start work rather than remain on benefit. And for far too long, people who've been out of work through illness have been written off by the system, and we're expected to live on benefits the rest of their working lives. But we've been working with them to ensure they do get into employment and do find a job so they can look after themselves and their families and achieve the dignity that we take in so many cases for granted. As I said, the recovery in employment is a product of a strong and dynamic private sector. I welcome the measures the Chancellor announced today to encourage business investment, to double the annual investment allowance to £500,000. That will encourage businesses in my constituency, which are strong, growing, dynamic manufacturing businesses, to invest more in capital equipment. They are aided, Mr Deputy Speaker, by the reduction in corporation tax. And we shouldn't forget the importance that has in sending a signal to economies to businesses overseas that the UK is a place that's open for business and a place where they should do business. But of course, the reduction in corporation tax is then mirrored by measures around the employment allowance and scrapping national insurance for young workers under the age of 21. I think these tax changes, along with cuts to red tape, investment in skills and reform of training, are a part of our long-term economic plan to sustain the economy and to sustain job creation. I want to discuss in the next few minutes, Mr Deputy Speaker, the measures announced in the budget around savings. Since we've come into office, this government has made radical reforms in the environment around pensions and savings. We ended compulsory unionisation. We are seeing a successful rollout of auto enrolment, which will give for many people their first savings and their first chance to build up a pension pot for their retirement. In the next Parliament, we'll be launching the single-tier pension, which will mean people will retire to pensions above the level of incessant benefits. We've seen the launch of the Money Advice Service and strengthen consumer protection through greater powers to the Financial Conduct Authority. These are important steps that help reform the savings landscape. But I also believe, as the Chancellor mentioned in his speech today, what they do is create a fresh platform for radical reform to pension savings. When compulsory annuitisation was scrapped, people could only take full advantage of the flexibility of income drawdown products if they could demonstrate they would not be entitled to means-tested benefits. That meant they had to have a guaranteed income of £20,000 a year. That, of course, predated the introduction of single-tier pension, and that limit was set at an amount to ensure people didn't fall back on those means-tested benefits. Now we've got the single-tier pension in place, it's right to reduce that amount to £12,000 this year. But we also know that for many consumers, it is difficult to shop around to buy an annuity. They're bewildered by the choice that's there in the market. And often for many, annuities are the only product they can buy. And we've seen in recent surveys just how badly off consumers are as a consequence of not shopping around. I think the announcements that Chancellor's made today about the simplification of how people can use their defined contribution pension pot will radically transform the insurance and savings market. They will actually force insurance companies to demonstrate those products are good value and actually create room for innovation for others to come up with products that will help people maximise their income in retirement. I'll give way to my uncle friend.
For giving way, would you agree with me that the historic reforms announced today on the pensioner bond, the tax simplification of annuities and the scrapping of the 10p rate begin the process of rebuilding a savings culture in this country, which we last did in the 80s and was so shamelessly attacked by the former Prime Minister through a series of stealth attacks on savings and pensions?
Yeah, my uncle friend is absolutely right, and I think this should be seen as the first stage in a series of reforms, because as the Chancellor also said in his statement today, that the OBR predict the savings ratio will continue to fall. So as well as ensuring that we can provide a better deal for those in retirement, a better way to spend their pension pots, to encourage them to build up more through ISAs, there's some more that we need to do, and I'll come back to that in a second. So these are radical reforms. But I do want to welcome another part of the package, which I think goes hand in hand with the increased flexibility. Because the challenge that many pensioners face is actually being able to find advice, is to be able to find someone to help them through the complex decisions about what they do in retirement. We've seen in some of the surveys published recently just what a bad job some of these comparison websites do for people trying to buy an annuity. So I think the right to advice actually is an important part of that package of reform. But I would say this to the Treasury bench. We actually need to go further. We have a saving system around auto-enrollment, which assumes that people don't think too hard about saving, but save automatically. We then expect at the point of retirement for them to engage in saving. We actually need to make sure we have more advice and guidance available to people before they retire to help them think about what age they want to retire, what sort of income they want to retire on. And I think that a key part of the next stage of reform should be to take that right for advice and see how we can provide better advice for those in the run-up to retirement to help them provide more for their retirement. I'll happily give way, yes.
But isn't there also a very cruel dilemma in public policy, because the saver wants a better rate of interest, and we need low interest rates to promote economic growth and service the government debt, so there is a trade-off, and that's why tax breaks are particularly welcome at a time of low interest rates.
Yeah, absolutely, and my radical friend provides me an opportunity to praise the Chancellor for introducing the pensioner bond. Those higher rates of interest will provide an attractive way of enabling people to save and also providing some support to the Treasury. My honourable friend for Norfolk did raise a point about the savings culture. And I think we do need to recognise that we need to help those on low incomes improve their savings too. The minimum contributions on auto-enrolment, whilst to help people get onto the savings ladder, aren't high enough to provide people with a reasonable replacement income in retirement, one that's proportionate to the income they had whilst they're in work. Those on higher up the income scales tend to do better. Not only do they qualify for higher tax relief, their pension contribution rates need to be higher too. They also tend to have additional sources of income and saving in retirement. And I would encourage my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, to look at this area carefully. I welcome the fact we've increased the personal allowances for those on low income. In a constituency like mine, where the average wage is £24,000 a year, increases in the personal allowance are valuable. But as well as helping the low paid whilst they're in work, we should also think about how we help them prepare for retirement too. And I think that will help provide a rounded package of measures to help people build up savings for their retirement, and then once they are in retirement, think about how they get best value for money from those savings. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I would say this. You can't simply repair 13 years of damage in just a few years of this first term of the government. The problems we inherited were deep-seated and challenging. An economy that was unbalanced, too dependent on the South, too dependent on financial services, a government addicted to spending and taxing and borrowing. Tackling these problems against the backdrop of economic uncertainty abroad was not easy. Plenty of commentators, including the party opposite, said it couldn't be done. They prophesied huge increases in unemployment as we cut back the public sector. They said we were cutting too far and too fast. They have been proved wrong. The economy is recovering. Growth is expected in the UK to outstrip that of our main competitors. More people are in work than ever before. Now is not the time for complacency. We need to continue with reforms and we need to continue to drive the recovery forward.
Directorate.